Today in Dave's Garage, we're going to blink an LED in C using a Raspberry Pi and Visual Studio Code. I'll show you every step you need to know, from connecting the LED, to installing Visual Studio Code, to writing the actual software, and walking it in the debugger. I'll include every step of configuration that's needed from a brand new machine, so you won't miss a step along the way. I'll even tell you which leg of the LED is which, so that you don't have to try it both ways. Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. Odds are you've got a Raspberry Pi kicking around in a drawer somewhere, and maybe you even used it once or twice, but once the novelty of installing Linux on a really tiny computer wears off, you might just have been hard-pressed with what to actually do with it, and perhaps you wind up doing nothing at all. I'm going to fix that today by taking you from zero to hero with all the steps needed to blink an LED as you single-step a Hello World C app in the Visual Studio Code debugger. Now, what's so great about blinking an LED? Well, in one sense, you're asking the wrong guy, because I've got a bit of an LED problem myself. I mean, I just put a bank of digitally controlled LEDs and an ESP32 into a 1955 Pontiac hood ornament. For fun. The real goal, though, is to get you far enough along that you can experiment with it, because that's the fun part. But there's this daunting hurdle up front, I think, when you first look at a Pi. How do you get from a single-board computer to a breadboard with a blinking light and a Hello World C app that builds and runs under Raspbian Linux? Well, that's what we're going to do today. From there, it's up to you where you take it. Change the blink speed, add another color of LED, add some MOSFETs, and drive the whole thing as a strip of LEDs, and so on. Whatever you do next, at least you'll start from a working baseline and not spend all your time struggling just to get something working. To make it all work, literally all you will need is a Pi 3B or later and an LED to do the blinking. I've gone a step further and used a breakout board and a breadboard and a fancy case for my Pi, but rest assured I'll also show you how to do it with just the LED and a bare Pi, so hang in there. Let's have a look at putting it all together. We'll try this two ways, first with a fancy breakout board, and then I'll show you how to do it with just two wires and an LED. Let me bust out my awesome Wira driver kit here and grab the correct hex bit, link in the video description. Now, before I mount this in the case, I need to connect this 40-pin ribbon cable to the GPIO pins, which will allow me to break it out directly into the breadboard. So, first I plug one end into the Raspberry Pi itself. This breakout board will adapt the incoming ribbon cable to split it out into both sides of the breadboard so I can get all my GPIOs there. Next, I'll plug the ribbon cable into the breakout header, and that should give me access to all the pins from the Raspberry Pi directly on the breadboard. I'm not even going to bother connecting the power and ground rails this time. I'm just going to go directly with the LED to a ground pin and one of the GPIO pins, which I'll set to power. Next, we mount it in the case, which has a special opening to allow that ribbon cable to pass out. I don't know about putting Raspberry Pis in cases. I'm not sure about the heat dissipation. I think I'd rather have a fan or a big heat sink on it, but this case actually contacts and is aluminum and seems to be pretty good for heat dissipation. Haven't had a problem yet. And finally, we'll put in the LED. The ground pin will go to the ground tab on the breakout board, and the power pin will go to pin 26. That way, when we power pin 26, the LED will be grounded and it should just light up. Next, I'll put away my awesome Wira screwdriver set, link in the video description, and then we'll take a look at how to do it with just the Raspberry Pi by itself, already powered because I trust myself that much. And I hook an LED up with the ground going to the ground pin, and the power going to pin 26. And right away, it starts blinking because the code's already running as a proof of concept to show you that this is actually all you need to be set up and running right away. Now, the one thing you do need to do is to make sure your Pi is set up for SSH, by which I mean the secure shell that you can use to log into a console over the network. And if you're not going to plug the Pi into a physical network, then you also need to set up Wi-Fi on the Pi. The good news is that both are very simple these days, because the program that you use to create the MicroSD card for the Pi to boot from has these as options. You can specify the Wi-Fi SSID and the password, as well as enabling SSH right from the start. Let's take a look at these steps now so you know exactly how to set up your Pi. Once you launch the Raspberry Pi imager, we select which OS we want, and I'll go with Raspberry Pi OS 32-bit. Choose which storage, and I'll pick my USB card. And before I click write, I'll go into settings and make a few changes. I'll set the host name to Pi4-8G01. I'm going to enable SSH with password authentication turned on. I'm also going to configure the wireless LAN. When you click Save, it'll be prepared to write the image with those options. Next, we need to set up our development environment, and fortunately, it's pretty straightforward. All we need to do is install the free VS Code editor from Microsoft and then enable remote development inside of it, and then we're ready to go. Now, I'm going to start with a blank machine here so you don't miss any important setup. First thing I'm going to do is just type VS Code into the search box here so that I can go and find VS Code download. Make sure you either get it from visualstudio.com or microsoft.com. I'm going to pick Windows because that's the platform I'm building this on. And once the download is complete, I just click Open File, and that should launch the setup. With the setup starting, I read, of course, and then accept the agreement. Then I check off these two boxes, which will add File Explorer shortcuts for opening files and folders in VS Code, which I find handy. Once the setup progress bar completes, and this is not even sped up, this is actually how fast this install runs, so it doesn't take much of your time, you are done and ready. It'll automatically launch when it's complete, and now we're inside Visual Studio Code. Once we're up and running, the single thing we need to do is to install an extension called Remote Development. So we'll click on the Extensions tab on the right-hand side here, and we'll go find Remote Development. So I'm a little zoomed in so you can't see the entire title, but there it is, Remote Devi. I'll click Install, and within a second or two, it's installed. And that's all we need to do. Now, because this uses SSH to connect to whatever remote system, we go to Remote-SSH, and we're going to say Add a Host. That will allow us to add the Pi to our list of hosts that it can connect to. And to do that, we give it the command line that it needs to SSH into that machine, which in my case is SSH Dave at pi4-8g-01, but it'll vary for you with whatever your Pi is named. As soon as I save that information, you can see a dialog pops up in the bottom right that allows me to connect with a simple click. Now, what it's going to do behind the scenes is to connect via SSH and install whatever software is required on the other end to make this whole thing work. In our case, it's a Pi, and it's going to ask us right away what kind of system it is. I'll say Linux, and that'll tell it which kind of software it needs to install over SSH. Next, I'll pick File Open Folder, and that folder will be found on the Pi file system, not my local Windows machine, because we're now connected to the Pi. So I'm going to go into my source folder, and I've got a little temp folder there that I created. Now we want to start from scratch and create a new file. So let's go File New, and we'll create a brand new file. I'll quickly save the file as test.cpp so I get the right syntax highlighting, and you can watch as I type this thing in really quickly in sped up vision. WiringPi is the header for the library that will allow us to actually interop with the GPIO pins, setting pin mode, digital write, and so on. That's the only header or lib that we're going to need. Everything else is going to be 100% standard C. Now, it's always good practice to make sure your Pi is up to date. The image that we use to create the MicroSD boot image is not necessarily complete with all the latest updates, including security fixes, so it's a good policy to update the machine with sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade, as I'll show you right away. Once we do that, we then need to install the one library that we'll be using to control the GPIO pins on the Pi. Now, on a simpler microcontroller like an Arduino or an ESP32, controlling the pins is relatively easy, and behind the scenes, it can be as simple as a special processor instruction that sets lines high and low directly. But the Pi isn't a standalone microcontroller, though. It's a full single-board computer. And interoperating with the GPIO pins is much more complicated when you actually have to do the work. Fortunately, there's a library available to do the work for us, and a header file that comes with it that makes our work as simple as it is on the Arduino, where we just call digital write with the pin number to change a value on a pin. And speaking of pin numbers, it's a bit of a mess because there are two numbering schemes known as BCM and wiringPi. It's a long historical story where the original numbering simplified things too much and they labeled things as GPIO 0 through GPIO 7 even though they had other pin numbers. I connected the LED to the breakout board on pin 26, which turns out to be wiringPi pin 25. And so long story short, you need a table to go from one type to the other. While you can find that table easily on the web with Google, you can also use a utility called GPIO that gets installed along with the wiringPi library. The utility will print not only the lookup table for you, but also tell you the current state of all the pins on the real Pi. You need to simply pass read all at the command line and the rest is automatic. The last thing you need to know is that you must run your code as root for it to have access to the GPIO pins. To get around that, I created a group that owns the pins and I made myself a member of it, but for now, just remember to use sudo if you run your code manually. And if you wind up having to do that a lot, then look into the group stuff under Linux. Let's have a look at updating the Pi itself and installing the wiringPi library. Now, when you add a code dependency like that, and this is the only time we'll be doing it, you have to do it on the Pi and not on the PC you're working on. So I'm going to SSH into the Pi. I'm going to run a sudo apt update and then a sudo apt upgrade to make sure the machine is generally up to date. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to run sudo apt install wiringPi. And that's all I need to do. We'll let that churn away for a few seconds, and as soon as the install is complete, we'll run a command called gpio. We're going to ask for the read all, which will tell us what the states of all the pins are. But more important, it'll provide a table that has the BCM pins and the wiringPi pin numbers, so we can see that our physical pin number 26 on our board is going to be logical pin 25. You'll notice LED pin is 25 in the code, and that's the reason why. Now we're ready to write and test a simple C program that will blink the LED. And all we have to do is set pin 25 to output and then alternately set it high and low with some delay in between. Behind the scenes, remember the VSCode is actually connected to your Pi and that the code will be compiled on the Pi. You can see that in the bottom left corner of the VSCode window. In other words, there's no cross-development happening here. It's all happening on the Pi except for the editing itself. Back to the code, you'll see the first thing it does is call wiringPi setup. That's going to be essential and mandatory every time you use this library, and it's a one-time thing. You just call it at your main entry point. Next, we set the pin mode of our LED pin to be output. And I think that's pretty much self-explanatory, but we'll be driving an LED, and so we need to set it to output. If it were connected to a switch or a button and we were reading from it, in that case, we would set it to input. While true simply means do this forever. This loop has 4 simple steps that are repeated indefinitely. It sets the LED pin to be high, which will turn on our LED. It then delays 500 milliseconds, which is half a second. It then sets the LED pin to low, which turns it off, and delays for half a second again. Now to compile the code, we're going to press F1, bring up our command palette, and pick Run Build Task. And as soon as we do, we'll see the code compiles, but it does not link. And the reason is because we have not set a linker to know about wiringPi. We told the compiler with our #include, but we have to tell the linker by passing it on the command line. We do that in the tasks.json file by adding a single parameter here. -L wiringPi with no space between the -L and the wiringPi. Now, if you're like me, you're getting scared. You're like, oh man, there's JSON and build environment. I don't want to know about all that. Well, you really don't need to. It's just that one line, and that's the only thing you're probably going to have to touch in there ever for the life of your Raspberry Pi programming. And now, if we pick Run Build Task again, it should build successfully, which it does. And the output is in a program called test. Now, we could just fire open a terminal and run the thing, but let's do even one step further. We're going to click on the Run and Debug tab on the far right, and we're going to pick Debug, so we can single step this by hitting a breakpoint and seeing what happens. I put a breakpoint by pressing F9 on line 13, and once the debugger is turned away, we can see that's exactly where it lands. And as I press F10 to step through here, it loops through, and it's pretty responsive, except for the delay lines, of course. And like any good debugger environment, you've got a call stack, watch area, and variables up on the top right here. I can expand my variables. The only ones I have came in from main. And I can inspect registers, and so on. Basically, it's got a full good debug environment, and it's all responsive, fast, and runs remote, so you're not stuck using GDB on the Pi. Now, the beauty of it, of course, is that you are, in fact, using GDB on the Pi. You just don't know it because it's all being done by Visual Studio Code and the Visual Studio Code server that's installed on the Pi itself. So VSCode drives GDB for you, just like you would do yourself if you were an old gray-bearded wizard who actually knew how to use GDB on the Pi. If you have any interest in matters related to autism, Asperger's, or ASD, please check out my book on Amazon, Secrets of the Autistic Millionaire. It's got nothing to do with money and everything to do with living a successful life on the spectrum. It's everything I know now that I wish I'd known back then. Now, I figure that Jeff Geerling has the Pi pretty much covered from the hardware standpoint, but if you'd like to see more content on the programming side of the Pi, please let me know in the comments along with what topics you'd like to see me cover. Remember, I'm mostly in this for the subs and likes, so please be sure to leave me one of each before you go today. In the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage.